fall of man, God permitted Adam and Eve, his wife, to eat fruit from every tree in Eden except the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which it would be death to taste or even touch. The serpent who was there subtly asked Eve, "Has God not forbidden you to eat any fruit whatsoever?" She answered, "No, but he warned us on pain of death to abstain from a certain tree in the middle of this garden." The serpent cried, "Hen, God has deceived you. Its fruit does not cause death, but only confers wisdom. He is keeping you in ignorance." Thus Eve was persuaded to taste the fruit, and made Adam do likewise. When they had eaten, Adam and Eve looked at each other and, suddenly understanding that they were naked, plucked fig leaves and sewed them into aprons. They heard God walking through the garden at dusk, and hid among the trees. God called, "Adam," and again, "Adam, where are you?" Adam looked out from his hiding place and said, "I heard your approach, Lord, and hid my nakedness for shame." God asked, "Who told you of nakedness? Have you then eaten fruit of the forbidden tree?" Adam answered, "Eve gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate it." God turned to Eve, "Alas, woman, what have you done?" She sighed, saying, "The serpent tricked me." God cursed the serpent, "You shall lose your legs, and writhe upon your belly forever, eating dust. I set a lasting enmity between you and woman. Her children will stamp on your children's heads until their heels are bruised." Then he cursed Eve, "I will multiply your labor and sorrow. You shall bear children in pain. You shall yearn for your husband, and be ruled by him." See, his next curse fell upon Adam, "Because you have listened to Eve rather than to me, I curse the soil that you must now till all the days of your life, eating bread in the sweat of your brow, struggling to uproot thorns and thistles. And at length death shall return your body to the dust from which I formed it." Since aprons of fig leaves were too fragile for such hard labor, God mercifully made Adam and Eve garments of skin. But he said to himself, "This man has become like a god in his knowledge of good and evil. What if he were to pluck the fruit hanging on the tree of life, and live eternally with that?" He drove Adam out of Eden, posting at its east gate certain cherubim called the flame of whirling swords, to bar his way. The serpent had rudely thrust Eve against the tree of knowledge, saying, "You have not died after touching this tree, neither will you die after eating its fruit." He also said, "All former beings are ruled by the latest beings. You and Adam, created last of all, rule the world. Eat therefore and be wise, lest God send new beings to usurp your truly." As Eve's shoulders touched the tree, she saw death approaching. "Now I must die," she groaned, "and God will give Adam a new wife. Let me persuade him to eat as I do, so that if we must both die, we shall die together, but if not, we shall live together." She plucked a fruit and ate, then tearfully pleaded with Adam until he agreed to share it degrees. Eve later persuaded all beasts and birds to taste the fruit, or all except the prudent phoenix, which has remained immortal ever since. Registered sign, G. Adam wondered at Eve's nakedness, because her glorious outer skin, a sheet of light smooth as a fingernail, had fallen away, yet though the beauty of her inner body, shining like a white pearl, entranced him, he fought for 3 hours against the temptation to eat and become as she was, holding the fruit in his hand meanwhile. At last he said, "Eve, I would rather die than outlive you. If death were to claim your spirit, God could never console me with another woman equaling your loveliness." So saying, he tasted the fruit, and the outer skin of light fell away from him also. Some hold that Adam, by eating the fruit, won the gift of prophecy, but that when he tried to pluck leaves for an apron, the trees drove him off, crying, "Begone, thief, who disobeyed your Creator. You shall have nothing from us." Nevertheless, the tree of knowledge let him take what he wished. They were fig leaves, approving his preference of wisdom to immortality. Others make the tree of knowledge an immense wheat stalk, taller than a cedar, or a vinstock, or a citron tree, whose fruit is used in celebration of tabernacles. But Enoch reports that it was a datapum. According to some, the garments God gave Adam and Eve resembled fine Egyptian linens from Beth Shean, that mold themselves to the body. According to others they were of goat skin, of coney skin, or Circassian wool, or camel's hair, or of the serpent's slough. Registered sign. Others again say that Adam's garment was a high priestly tobe, bequeathed by him to Seth, who bequeathed it to Methuselah, whose heir was Father Noah. Although his firstborn son, Japheth, should have inherited this robe, Noah foresaw that the children of Israel would spring from Shem, to whom therefore he entrusted it. Shem gave the robe to Abraham who, as God's beloved servant, could claim the firstborn's right, Abraham to Isaac, Isaac to Jacob. It then passed to Reuben, Jacob's firstborn son, and so the legacy continued, generation after generation, until the privilege of offering up sacrifices was taken by Moses from the firstborn of Reuben's house, and given to Aaron the Levite. Adam and Eve were driven out of Eden on the first Friday, the day in which they had both been created and had sinned. On the first Sabbath, Adam rested and prayed God for mercy. At its close he went to the upper Gihon, strongest of rivers, and there did 7 weeks penance, standing in midstream with water to the chin, until his body turned soft as a sponge. 1. Afterwards an angel came to Adam's comfort, and taught him the use of fire tongs and a smith's hammer, also how to manage oxen, so that he should not fall behindhand in his plowing. Registered sign 1. Genesis 111. 1:6, 2. Genesis M7:13, 3. Genesis M1, 14:19, 4. Genesis M1, 20:24, 5. Chapter 13, General Rab 172-74, B. Sanhedrin 29a, Adamskriften, 2800, Ur, CHT 4. Sinahab, 196, 7. Sources same as in preceding footnote 8. Adamskriften, 2829 G. General Rab 200-01, Yalkut General 34, 10. General Rab 139-42, 11. Sources same as in preceding footnote, and Ginsburg L.J., v. 9708, 12. General Rab 196, Tanhuma Buba General 1718, 13. Sources same as in preceding footnote 14. Tanhuma Buba General 133, Num. Rab 4.8, 15. Yalkut General, 3416. Adamskriften, 24, 33, 1. Some elements of the fall of man myth in Genesis are of great antiquity, but the composition is late, and even in places suggests Greek influence. The Gilgamesh epic, the earliest version of which can be dated about 2003 C, describes how the Sumerian love goddess Eridu created from clay a noble savage named Enkidu, who grazed among gazelles, slaked his thirst beside wild cattle and sported with dolphins, until a priestess sent to him by Gilgamesh initiated him into the mysteries of love. Though wise as a god, he was now shunned by the wild creatures, and the priestess therefore covered his nakedness, using part of her own garment, and brought him to the city of Uruk, where he became blood brother to the hero Gilgamesh. Later, Gilgamesh went in quest of the herb of immortality. He entered a gloomy tunnel 12 leagues long, and emerged in a paradise of jewel-hung trees owned by Siduri, goddess of wisdom. Declining the sun god's invitation to remain, Gilgamesh pressed on, until he learned from Utnapishtim, the Sumerian Noah, that the desired herb, a plant resembling buckthorn, grew deep under the sea. Gilgamesh tied stones to his feet, plunged down, found the herb and brought it safely back, but a serpent stole it from him when he visited a freshwater spring. He sadly resigned himself to death too. Adon calls Eve the mother of all living, Genesis M20, a title of this same love goddess Eridu, or Ishtar, and she confers wisdom on him, just as Eridu's priestess did on Enkidu. Since, however, the Babylonian legend of Marduk's creator had, centuries before, succeeded the Sumerian legend of Eridu's creatrix, the Hebrew creator is made to punish Eve for enlightening the innocent Adam. 3. Another source of the Genesis fall of man is the Akkadian myth of Adapa, found on a tablet at Tel Amara, Pharaoh Akhenaten's capital. Adapa, son of Ea, the Babylonian god of wisdom, was attacked in the Persian Gulf by a storm bird while catching fish for his father's priests, and broke its wing. The bird proved to have been the south wind. Ea summoned Adapa to explain his violence and warned him that, having displeased Anu, king of heaven, the gods would offer him the food and drink of death, which he must refuse. Anu, however, learning of this indiscreet disclosure, foiled Ea by offering Adapa the bread of life and the water of life and, when he refused them at his father's orders, grimly sending him back to earth as a perverse mortal. This myth supplies the theme of the serpent's warning to Eve, that God had deceived her about the properties of the forbidden fruit. 4. Another possible source of the Genesis fall of man is an ancient Persian myth. Meshia and Meshian at first live on fruit alone, but are then persuaded by the demon Ahriman to deny God. They lose their purity, fell trees, kill animals, and commit further evil. 5. According to a Cretan myth quoted by Apollodorus and Hyginus, and a Lydian myth quoted by Pliny, serpents possessed a herb of immortality. 6. The Genesis story, in which agricultural work is represented as a curse laid upon man because of Eve's inquisitiveness and disobedient mischief, mythically expresses the age-old Mediterranean point of view which regards physical labor, symbolized and exemplified by tillage of the soil, as an unmitigated and unavoidable hardship. This view continues to be shared in the Middle East, not only by the nomads who regard fellahin as slaves of the soil, but by most of the agricultural population itself. It was held, even before the creation story received its final shape, by a bitter Greek farmer, Hesiod, who was the first writer to regard agriculture as an evil laid upon mankind by ruthless gods. An entirely different view is expressed by the Greek myth of Tritolemus, whom Demeter rewards for his father's sake by initiating him into the mysteries of agriculture, which he rides out through the world to teach, mounted on a serpent-drawn chariot. 7. Eden as a peaceful rural retreat, where man lives at his ease among wild animals, occurs not only in the story of Enkidu but in Greek and Latin legends of the Golden Age, and must be distinguished from the jeweled paradise which Gilgamesh and Isaiah's Hellel visited. C. 8. The terrestrial paradise represents a jaded city dweller's nostalgia for simple country joys, or a dispirited laborer's for the fruit-eating innocence of childhood. The celestial paradise is enjoyed in a schizophrenic trance, induced either by asceticism, by glandular disturbance, or by use of hallucinogenic drugs. 8. It is not always possible to judge which of these causes produced the mystic visions of, say, Ezekiel, Enoch, Jacob Boehmer, Thomas Traherne and William Blake. Yet jeweled gardens of delight are commonly connected in myth with the eating of an ambrosia forbidden to mortals, and this points to a hallucinogenic drug reserved for a small circle of adepts, which gives them sensations of divine glory and wisdom. The Gilgamesh reference to buckthorn must be a blind. However, buckthorn was eaten by ancient mystics not as an illuminant but as a preliminary purgative. Soma, the Indian ambrosia, is said to be still in secret use among Brahmins. All gardens of delight are originally ruled by goddesses, but the change from matriarchy to patriarchy, male gods usurp them. A serpent is almost always present. Thus, in Greek myth, the garden of the Hesperides, whose apple trees bore golden fruit, was guarded by the serpent Ladon, and had been Hera's domain before she married Zeus, though her enemy Heracles eventually destroyed Ladon with Zeus's approval. The jeweled Sumerian paradise to which Gilgamesh went, was owned by Siduri, goddess of wisdom, who had made the sun god Shamash its guardian. In later versions of the epic, Shamash has degraded Siduri to a mere alewife serving at a nearby tavern. Indra, the leading Aryan god, appears to have borrowed a new form of Soma from the variously named Indian Mothagadis 10. A paradise whose secrets have lately been revealed is the Mexican Tlalocán, a picture of which Haim and Wasson reproduce from the Tepantitla fresco in Les Champignons Hallucinogenes du Mexique. It shows a spirit, branch in hand, weeping for joy on entering an orchard of fantasy. Cali bright fruit trees and flowers, watered by a river, full of fish, flowing from the mouth of a divine toad. This is the god Tlaloc, who corresponds closely with the Greek Dionysus, and whom his sister Chalchialuthliku has made co-ruler of her paradise. In the foreground lie irrigation canals over which 4 mushrooms meet to form a cross denoting the cardinal points of the compass. Behind the spirit rises a spotted serpent, Tlaloc in another aspect, a flowery dragon and huge colored butterflies hover aloft. The hallucinogenic drug inducing this vision was a toxic mushroom, still ritually eaten in several provinces of Mexico. Psilocybin, the active agent, is now ranked by psychiatrists with lysergic acid and mescaline as among the leading psychodelics, revealers of man's inner self. 11. Hallucinogenic mushrooms are common throughout Europe and Asia. Some varieties, which do not lose their toxic qualities when cooked, seem to have been introduced into sacred cakes eaten at Greek mysteries, and also at Arabian mysteries, since the Arabic root FDR occurs in words meaning toadstool, sacrificial bread, and divine ecstasy. Perseus went to the jeweled garden of the Hesperides aided by Athene, goddess of wisdom and, according to Pausanias, later built and named Mycenae in honor of a mushroom found growing on the site, from which flowed a pool of water. That the Indian paradise closely resembles these others suggests that Soma is a sacred mushroom disguised in food or drink, not, as most authorities hold, a variety of milkweed. And the ancient Chinese reverence for a mushroom of wisdom may have its origin in a similar cult. 12. The fervent love between Enkidu and the priestess, though omitted from the Genesis story, has been preserved by a Talmudic scholiast who makes Adam wish for death rather than be parted from Eve. Yet the myth of the 4 licenses man to blame woman for all his ills, make her labor for him, exclude her from religious office and refuse her advice on moral problems, 13. Ambrosia eaters often enjoy a sense of perfect wisdom, resulting from a close coordination of their mental powers. Since knowledge of good and evil, in Hebrew, means knowledge of all things, both good and evil, and does not refer to the gift of moral choice, the tree of life may have once been the host tree of a particular hallucinogenetic mushroom. For example, the birch is host to the Amanita muscaria sacramentally eaten by certain Paleo-Siberian and Mongol tribes. 14. An addition to the story of Adam's penance occurs in the 10th century Irish Salge Naran, based on an early Assyrian life of Adam and Eve evidently drawn from Hebrew sources. He fasts in Jordan, not Jehon, with water to his chin. As a reward, God lets Raphael give him certain mystical secrets. According to this text, God created Adam at Hebron, which may be a pre-exilic version of the myth. Some Byzantine writers' copyright make Adam repent only in his 600th year. 15. The serpent is widely regarded as an enemy of man, and of woman, c. 13 and 14. Sami